What's going on, guys, and welcome back to F1 22 for my team career mode, round number 15 of season 1, the Brazilian Grand Prix, or the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. I always just call it the Brazilian Grand Prix because, I don't know, it just sounds better. And I think they call it the Brazilian Grand Prix actually in real life, don't they? For some reason it's Sao Paulo in the game. I don't really know, but it's the Brazilian Grand Prix. And of course it is our final sprint weekend of this season, so some good hopes here because, I mean, I've already taken all my grid penalties that I need to. Well, at least I hope so. I won't have to take any here. Shouldn't have to take any in Abu Dhabi, hopefully. So, unless something crazy happens, we have like a mechanical failure, which is very likely, to be honest, because we haven't had a single mechanical failure this season so far. It's almost looking like we could get through a whole season, and the whole first season at that, without a mechanical failure. So, I mean, now that I've said that, I'm sure we'll have issues, but yeah, it's kind of crazy, to be honest. Maybe not a great thing, because perhaps further down the line, when we're actually in a championship fight and a much more competitive car, we will be having issues. But anyway, we go into this weekend. Of course, we've been adapting parts for I think it's aero and chassis that there will be a regulation change for next year. So we're not really going up too much in R&D, but we're still sticking there with Williams. Everybody's kind of doing the same sort of thing by the looks of it, although you have actually got Mercedes, McLaren and Red Bull at the top, who seem to be still upgrading quite a bit, which is going to be interesting for next season to see where they're at, because Red Bull have actually now overtaken Ferrari as the quickest car, so as the quickest team, so that could potentially bring up something in the race here. We actually managed to get through to Q2, which is amazing considering we're still the second to worst car, so I think it's our third time getting through to Q2, and I think the main reason is because of the end of this lap. It was a pretty decent lap all in all, but we got a mega tow right at the end of this lap from, I think it was Sergio Perez, and that just gave us the edge. But of course, when we do well in qualifying, Williams also does well, because Alexander Albon also gets through to Q2, so it makes me feel a little bit better in that, you know, if only I get through and everybody else in, you know, my team, Williams, all those sorts of cars don't get through, it makes me feel like, have I got the difficulty too low? But when Albon gets through, I feel like it's just we got a very good tow and a good lap. Onto our quickest Q2 lap, and as you can see there, Leclerc gets right in the way of us as we're starting our next lap. He just comes out of the pits as we're coming down that kind of straight there, and that definitely causes us issues on this lap, and it's not going to give us the best lap. I think, I can't remember the exact times, but I'm fairly sure we actually go slower in Q2 than we did in Q1 because of that issue there. I didn't have to come off the throttle, I just kept it flat, and he did kind of get out of the way, but he was right at the most awkward point at the most awkward time, and it meant that we kind of had to take a little bit of avoiding action, not slow down, but then we went quite wide through that corner. I had to actually let off and go quite a bit slower through that left-hander than we usually would. So I mean, that's probably lost us a couple of tenths right there. So yeah, it's not the best Q2 lap here, and of course we don't get through to Q3, but I was never really expecting that. Unfortunately, we do get beaten by Alexander Albon. He ends up P14 at the flag, we end up P16, so it's a bit of a, it's not the best qualifying. I mean, we got through to Q2, but Q2 wasn't great, but now we've got a sprint race.
Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting sprint. It's Carlos Sainz in pole position, edging out Lando Norris, who'll start from P2. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Leclerc, Perez, Max Verstappen, and Russell, Hamilton, Ricciardo, Fernando Alonso, and Mick Schumacher, Ocon, Gasly, Kevin Magnussen, and Albon, Bottas, Shaw, Yuki Tsunoda, and Lance Stroll, Joe, Vettel, Liam Lawson, and Nicholas Latifi. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We'll soon find out.
Alright, so it is sprint race time in Brazil, the final sprint of the season, and of course, we've had pretty good luck with sprint races. Imola was a decent sprint for us, although we didn't manage to quite get points. It was still a good finish, so I think we finished P11 in the race, thanks to a good sprint race as well. Last time out in Austria, we managed to score some points. So let's see if we can score points once again here as we get underway. It's not the best start from us, although we're going to dive around the outside of Bottas because Bottas manages to stay ahead of us, but we managed to just about stay ahead of, I think it was Vettel in the Aston Martin behind us, and Stroll. I think Vettel actually got a better start because Vettel was down in like P20 and he was right behind us coming into turn 1. As we go down this straight here, we get past Bottas, but then Bottas is having a look around the outside, but we're just going to squeeze him out of space and keep the Alfa Romeo behind us. It's been a great start from Alexander Albon up ahead, is behind Bottas now under fire from, I think, Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin there. But yeah, Albon's had a great start. He's up to like P12, P13. He's in P13 right now. I think started P14 in this sprint race. So P13 at the moment for Albon. He's looking to make work here because you would have seen in the starting grid order that a lot of people will be taking penalties for the main race. So there's no penalties as Bottas goes for a big dive up the inside of one of the last corners there as we get onto this kind of straight but not straight. You know, it's the back straight, but it's not 100% straight. You're kind of curving around to the left. But yeah, a lot of people taking grid penalties for the main race. So that means that a lot of us slower cars will be further up the order, even if we do finish a bit further down. So that's something to keep an eye on for the race. As we continue on here, at the front of the race, Carlos Sainz leads from pole position. Charles Leclerc, though, has got a good start. He started P3, but has managed to get up into P2. Of course, the main rival. I'm not actually sure if anyone else can win the championship now, other than Sainz and Leclerc. So it's looking like a Ferrari battle to the end, but Leclerc needs to get points on Sainz here because he is a little ways back. I think he's like 17 points back from Sainz at the moment. Lando Norris started P2. Unfortunately, he's down to P4, so he's not had the best start, with I think Perez currently the lead Red Bull in P3. A bit further on, we have Yuki Tsunoda trying to make a move on Nicholas Latifi. Tsunoda's not been doing great, especially in qualifying at the moment. Gasly's definitely been outperforming him, so he finds himself way down the back of the order. This is actually the final 4 positions. As you see, my teammate Liam Lawson and Zhou Guan Yu, who is currently in last place, he's not having a good race here either. Tsunoda on that occasion though can't quite make the move on Latifi, but I'm sure he'll try again later on. We just continue here. We're now kind of behind Magnussen and we can't really do anything, to be honest. We're sort of stuck here, not really close enough, not really quick enough on the straights, but quick through the corners. And as we come on to lap number 9 here, we brake for turn 1. I actually brake a little bit too late and then get a wheel on the grass on the outside, and that very nearly could have been a big disaster, but we just about managed to save it. Just went a bit too deep into that corner. We weren't looking at a lunge on Magnussen there, but yeah, kind of almost looked like a lunge, so that was interesting. The 2 Mercedes here are doing pretty decent. George Russell actually the lead Mercedes at the moment, so something we haven't seen too often, to be honest, in this career mode. Lewis Hamilton's definitely had the measure over Russell in this save of ours, but at the moment Russell is the lead Mercedes, and Russell is one of the drivers who's not taking a grid penalty for the race. So and I think Hamilton is, so depending on where Russell can finish here, I think he's currently sitting like P5, P6. Could be a good start for the race for him. As we have a look back at Yuki Tsunoda once again, this time he's going around the outside of Nicholas Latifi, and this time he gets the move done. Another place for Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri. And other than a few little battles here and there, it was a fairly quiet sprint race actually. Everybody finished. Carlos Sainz won again, so he's won all 3 sprint races this season. So I mean, I think you can quite easily say, quite convincingly say that Carlos Sainz is the sprint king in my F1 22 My Team season, My Team Career series. We end up P15, so we only make 1 position from where we started. Bit of a dull race, but it's going to be a good starting point for the race tomorrow, for the main race. I'm sure we'll be in the top 10 with all those penalties that are going on. So although it doesn't look too great at the moment, I think we've got a good chance still at points for the race. So let's see how things go.
Welcome along then to where heroes and history are made. It's where the 2008 title was decided in the very final corner. And just 1 year later, Jenson Button stormed through from 14th on the grid to claim his one and only Drivers' Championship. It's time then for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. We're racing today then at Interlagos, a historic 2.7-mile circuit and one of the few anti-clockwise tracks on the calendar. 15 corners in total, 9 to the left and 6 to the right, with a technical middle section opening up to a flat-out Sector 3. That gives us our best passing opportunity down into Turn 1. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position, just ahead of George Russell, who starts this event from P2. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Sainz, Fernando Alonso, Esteban Ocon and Albon. Gasly, Ricciardo, they'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Shaw and Valtteri Bottas. Vettel, Mick Schumacher and Sir Lewis Hamilton. They've taken a grid penalty. And Magnussen. Stroll, Tsunoda, Liam Lawson and Guan Yu Zhou. Latifi, they'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Verstappen, Perez and Lando Norris starts from the back of the grid. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today? Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the run down into Turn 1, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
Alright, so here we go. For the race, we're starting P9. So we are in the top 10, we're only just in the top 10. But we are definitely there. It's George Russell is on the front row of the grid alongside Charles Leclerc. So that's big for Leclerc in the championship because, I mean, Sainz is only in P3, so he's right there. But, yeah, Leclerc does have advantage at the moment, and Alexander Albon is in P6. So what lofty heights for my team, but not just my team, for Williams in P6. That is crazy. To 5 red lights for the Brazilian Grand Prix in Season 1. Lights out, and away we go. We have Daniel Ricciardo to the left of us. Valtteri Bottas gets an amazing start next to us. This time he's starting in front of behind us. We start ahead, but once again it's side by side with us, with Valtteri Bottas through Turn 1, Turn 2. This side we're on the outside, but we managed to keep the position. Ricciardo is side by side with Pierre Gasly up ahead as well. We're going to go a bit defensive into the next corner because actually we've now got Sebastian Vettel around the outside. He's trying to make a move, but he can't quite get that done, and I think he's going to come under fire from Bottas. Vettel had a great start there from a little bit further back, but unfortunately is not able to make the move on ours, but is still ahead of Bottas at the moment as we get a little bit of a kick out of oversteer around that long right hand corner, but we're just staying behind Gasly at the moment. We haven't lost any positions. Albon is actually Albon is in P5. Albon has made a position and is up to P5 in the Williams. That is absolutely crazy. He's got Daniel Ricciardo behind him, who's had a great start from P8 on the grid. He's already up to P6 by the end of this first lap, and he's going to be trying to make his way through the order. But we are still sitting in P9. We have now got Sebastian Vettel still hot on our heels behind us, but with a bit of a tow and DRS when we get it, and generally we seem fairly good on this track. I think we should be able to just about stay ahead of the Aston Martin. As we have a look now at Daniel Ricciardo going for a move on Albon, dummies him to the right, and Albon goes a little bit too deep, and that's a pretty easy move for Ricciardo. So Albon now back to P6 again, but now he's got Ocon and Pierre Gasly behind him, so let's see what he can do about those two. As we are now right behind Pierre Gasly, having a look to see if we can maybe make a move. We're making a defensive into Turn 1. We're going to go and try and go around the outside. Bit of a wheel on the grass again though, and just a very scary moment as Gasly actually has a little bit of a twitch around Turn 2 as well. And for us, well, we just about managed to save it, but that was another scary moment. Fairly similar to the one with Magnussen, although this time actually getting a bit more of a kick out of oversteer than we did with Magnussen earlier in the sprint. As we have a look at, I think it's Mick Schumacher in the Haas, is getting quite easily overtaken by Lewis Hamilton there. Schumacher just went a bit too deep into that corner, and Hamilton says thank you very much. At the front of the road, Charles Leclerc still leading the way fairly considerably from, I believe it is George Russell in P2, and then Carlos Sainz, I think, might have actually dropped behind Fernando Alonso, so he's actually now running P4 with Alonso in P3. So this race is looking like it could be a spicy one at the front, and well, it's looking like a pretty spicy one for us too. The gap between Albon and Ricciardo is now rather big, but Albon is doing an amazing job at keeping Ocon behind him. Albon definitely doesn't have the pace of Ocon, Gasly, probably not even us, but he's just defending so well. As we now have a look at my teammate, he's now under fire from Sergio Perez, of course retiring at the end of the season, making his way through the grid after a grid penalty. But my teammate Liam Lawson is going to not make this easy for the Mexican driver, and he's going to try and stick with him, but unfortunately can't quite do it. But still, a little bit of good racing from Lawson. We need to see more of that, because he's not had many star moments this season, if really any at all, to be honest. As we are now once again looking at the back of Pierre Gasly, not wanting to make the same mistake we did, but there's a bit of a gap between him and Ocon, and we're even closer. We're going to go to the outside again, make sure he gives us the room. Late on the brakes, we're still side by side through the center S's, and it's still side by side between me and Gasly. We're just about ahead. I think he might still be slightly alongside me, as we're going to have to go defensive into the next corner, because he's going to have DRS, and he's probably going to try and make a move around the outside. He has a look but doesn't quite be able to do it, but then he cuts back to the inside again and just about manages to get up alongside us. And now we're just going to deploy ERS and go hard into this next long right hand corner, and we just about managed to get ahead of Gasly. That is us up into P8 now, so we're making slow but good progress in this race. As further back, we have Lewis Hamilton once again on Valtteri Bottas. He had a battle with Bottas in Japan last time out. It was a bit more difficult that time, because this time around Bottas goes a bit too wide into turn 1, a bit too deep, and Hamilton gets past. Like I said, Fernando Alonso managed to get the jump on Carlos Sainz at the start of the race. He is currently sitting in P3, but Sainz will not want to have that happen any longer. He wants to be the quicker Spaniard here, and I mean, he's in the quicker car in the Ferrari, and he gets up the inside quite easily and is past Alonso, now up into the final podium position spot, and will now want to chase down George Russell for P2 and then his teammate. We have more Red Bull action once again. Sergio Perez here making great moves in this race, going around the outside of Valtteri Bottas, and that is a beautiful move from the retiring Mexican. Awesome move from Perez there. He's making good progress in this race after starting, I think it was P21. We continue on here, and Albon is still very much just backing up this pack. He's doing such an amazing job of keeping Ocon behind, and I just don't quite have, I don't have the pace of the Alpine. If he was in clean air, he would be fairly long gone, I think, but thankfully we've kind of got the pace of the Williams, but I think the problem is Albon is not amazing through the corners. We can definitely catch through the corners, and Ocon's also catching through the corners, but on the straights, that Williams is slippery. It is a slippery fish on the straights, so it's just so difficult to make any moves on any of these guys. So it's turning into a little bit of a DRS train at the moment. Just behind us, we've got Hamilton still trying to make moves through the order, and he's going to go for a move up the inside on Sebastian Vettel. These two also had a little bit of a battle in Japan last time out. Vettel's going to give Hamilton more of a fight than Bottas did, but it's still going to be a relatively easy move for the 7-time world champion, now up into, I think, P10 now, so he's finally in the points for Hamilton after starting back because of a grid penalty. We're going to come into the pits. We're going to pretty much mimic Albon here. Ocon stays out, but I'm more worried about Albon, because I'm more worried about Albon beating us and Williams beating us in the championship than, Ocon. He's already well ahead of us, so he's not really to be worried about, as Albon has a big slide in the pit lane. I've never seen that before. AI having sideways moments in the pits. That's That's definitely new for me, but Albon just about manages to keep it out of the barriers and stays ahead. And now next lap around, Ocon comes into the pits, and now it's a chance of who will get out ahead. Will Ocon manage to get out ahead of Albon? It looks like he may have done, but Albon's going to give him a run into this next corner, turn 3, I believe it is, or maybe even turn 4, I don't know exactly. Albon manages to stay ahead because Ocon is on cold, hard tyres, but unfortunately we're not quite able to do anything. We actually go a bit too deep into this right-hander, and that allows Hamilton, who's got ahead of Gasly, to go up the inside of us, and he's going to try and make the move on us, but we're just going to defend from Hamilton at the moment and keep ahead of him. I really don't think we have the pace. We really don't have the pace to stay ahead of Hamilton all the time, but you know, with a DRS train maybe something can happen, but I end up losing a little bit of time to the cars ahead, so I'm actually going to let Hamilton pass. Hopefully then he can battle with Ocon, with Albon, and that might allow us to make more positions, because now we're in P10, we're still in the points, but we're now on the bottom end of it. We've still got more Red Bull battles. I think this might be... No, this is still Perez? Yes, this is still Sergio Perez, who is the lead Red Bull at the moment. As you can see, Verstappen is behind him at this point in time. Perez, though, trying to make a move on one of the Alfa Romeos. Maybe that's Bottas, and it was Zhou they were getting past before. I can't quite remember. We've got still Carlos Sainz demanding the lead of this race. You've then got George Russell in second place, and he's got a bit of a gap, but Carlos Sainz, as you can see there, is coming quick and fast on Russell, so it's going to be tight between these two for second place, although I think as long as he doesn't make any mistakes, Leclerc has got this win in the bag. Well, the Red Bulls may be about to get a little bit frosty here, as Verstappen is going for a move round the outside of his teammate Sergio Perez. Verstappen started in front of Perez. Perez managed to get the jump at the start and has stayed ahead this time around, but trying to get past the Alfa Romeo, Perez is having a little bit of trouble, and Verstappen is trying to get past his teammate, but Perez beautifully manages to defend and stay ahead of his teammate. Obviously no team orders for the Red Bulls here, and at the end of that lap, onto the next lap, Perez now going for a move on Bottas. It must have been Zhou Guanyu before, because Zhou Guanyu was down the end of the field, Bottas it was a bit further up. Perez gets past, Verstappen goes past in the next corner and is kind of boxed in by his teammate, so it's still side by side with the Alfa Romeo as they go around the next corner, but Verstappen now up into another position. That is good work from the two Red Bull drivers, but it could be getting tense at Red Bull, because I think Perez and Verstappen are about to have a fair battle. We continue on here, and we're just kind of staying within DRS range. Hamilton has managed to catch up to the back of the two drivers ahead, but pretty much like everyone else, he's not really able to do anything. It's actually quite difficult to overtake on this track. I'm a little bit surprised, to be honest. I always thought that Interlagos was one of the better overtaking tracks, but it's kind of been a bit of a stalemate, to be honest, at least for us in this race. I mean, there's plenty of battles going on throughout the field, but nothing too crazy. They're all kind of happening into the same areas, and even on this back straight here, I think it's just because of how quick that Williams is. Albon is just able to stay ahead and kind of just neutralize everyone behind him. Carlos Sainz on lap 31 is now right behind George Russell. He is now within DRS range. He's got 5 or so laps to see if he can get past and get that second place on the podium, because that is going to be big going into the final round at Abu Dhabi, because it does not look like he'll be winning this race, so he will be taking a knock to Leclerc. But on the second to last lap ahead of us, that looks like issues for Albon. His engine goes up in smoke. That is terrible news for the Thai Brit driver. He was doing so well, keeping P6. It looked like he was going to finish P6 in this race, but his engine has gone up in smoke right at the end. That is so disappointing for him and Williams, but now the chaos begins, because Hamilton is trying to make a move now on Esteban Ocon. They go side by side through the center S's. Ocon just about manages to stay ahead at the moment. We are now looking right behind these guys to pick up any pieces for anything that happens. Hamilton now going for another move, round the outside of Ocon through the next corner, goes a little bit wide. We have a little bit of a sniff if up the inside, but nothing to be done there. Hamilton and Ocon still side by side as we watch on ahead. They go a bit wide into the next corner. We dive up the inside of Esteban Ocon. He comes back at us, but we're going to keep ahead. Go late on the brakes into the next corner. He has a look around, but can't do anything. That's us now up into P7. I don't think we're going to be able to do anything on Hamilton, but we've made the move on Ocon. That was a crazy last lap. So unfortunate for Albon there. He was looking pretty comfortable to get P6 in this race, which would have been massive. It would have been massive for Williams. I think it would have actually put them joint P10 with Aston Martin in the constructors, but unfortunately for him, it's not to be. We finished P7. It's a good race from us. And yeah.
That's a spectacular victory, and with it, the championship is secure. It's been a magnificent season, and they thoroughly deserve the cheers of the crowd here today. Tell me, Ant, how did they manage to achieve this win?
I think it was clear what the main contributing factor out on track was: speed. I know it sounds like an awfully reductive statement, but fast cars win races, and we saw that today with our winner.
And here we are, a team that is no stranger to the podium, taking their place on top once again. A sublime race today, and a stunning win for Ferrari.
So Charles Leclerc wins the Brazilian Grand Prix. I forgot what race this was for a second. George Russell comes through for another podium. He hasn't had a podium since the start of the season. I don't know how early on in the season it was, but it was quite early on from what I remember that he got his first podium. And Hamilton's been racking up the podiums ever since, but this time it's George Russell P2 for Mercedes, and Carlos Sainz has to settle for P3, so that means that his championship is going to take a little bit of a knock going into the final round, because Leclerc also takes fastest lap, so he gets an 11-point swing over Sainz. Sainz will still be ahead, but Leclerc's definitely closed that gap, although when you remember, Sainz did score one more point than Leclerc in the sprint race. So it's actually, over this weekend, it's only 10 points ahead for Leclerc, and that means that going into the final round, Abu Dhabi, Sainz leads Leclerc by 7 points. So basically, it is the gap between finishing first and second that is between the two leaders there at the top. We move up to P14, so we've moved up quite a bit there, ahead of Sebastian Vettel, ahead of Pierre Gasly as well there, and that also moves us, Mazda Speed Racing, to P8 in the Constructors' Championship. We're now ahead of AlphaTauri and Aston Martin, so that is awesome for us. I think that's 18 points, I can't quite see, but I'm pretty sure it's 18 points for us. So P8's as high up as we're going to get, but that is now the goal. Beat AlphaTauri, beat Aston Martin, beat Williams. P8 is where we want to finish. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.